What's going on? Steve Chase here, and we're still at BlockShow Singapore knocking it out. We're bringing you CEOs, innovators, founders, technologists. I mean, quite frankly, we're bringing you it all so you can find out where you are in this world and play nice with the blockchain. We're here with Yat Siu. Please introduce yourself to the DLive world, to the BlockShow world.
Thank you. Glad to be here. My name is Yat Siu. I'm the chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands, which is a gaming company that is basically taking big bets in non-fungible tokens and crypto collectibles.
Okay, so for the person that does not understand non-fungible token, explain how the process of your system works. Your entire gaming system works.
Sure. So, I mean, I think for everyone, do look in there, or? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Way,
so one of the things about non-fungible tokens, I think it was made most famous originally through CryptoKitties, in which we are also a shareholder, and we had sort of an early involvement in it. And what's different about a non-fungible token versus a sort of fungible token like a Bitcoin or Ethereum is that every single item is scarce and rare, right? And so in the past, when it comes to these sort of items and having rare scarcity around them, it wasn't possible to do that because on the internet everything was a copy, right? Sort of even in video games when you play today, it's actually not an original, right? The company just produces them, puts them in a database, and but so you don't own anything. You can't actually show ownership. But if the item is minted on the blockchain, it actually now can be validated as something that is sort of unique, and because it's a non-fungible token, it's scarce and rare. So there's only one of them. But the scarcity in that element is not because you have something that looks distinctly different. It could be 1,000 of the same items, but because there's a provenance and a history attached to it, you can make them scarce through the action. So an example would be like, for instance, a cup of water, right? So the utility is to drink water, and there might be 1,000 cups that I'm selling. And if I sold you that cup, it might be worth just $1. But if Taylor Swift owned that cup, it's probably worth more. And if it's on the blockchain, I can actually validate and say, oh, actually, I know that this person owned this, or they did something to it. So that's kind of what we're so excited about. And for those of you who remember, CryptoKitties sort of, really sort of showed the world what sort of crypto collectibles could be and the power of non-fungible tokens.
So you're taking this a new word, crypto collectibles, and how are you exactly applying it in this gaming world now?
Right. So Animoca Brands is a publicly listed game company, and before anything related to blockchain, and we have existing gamers. And so what we want to do is essentially bring the world's gamers onto blockchain through non-fungible tokens. And we think that gaming will be one of the major driver, if not perhaps the driver, that will bring out blockchain adoption. And the reason we say that is because right now blockchain has this sort of strong group of people who are speculating, who have big beliefs in decentralized finance and all that kind of stuff. But the issue is that outside of this hardcore, to the regular user, blockchain is kind of not that important, right? It's in some ways for those guys, blockchain is a solution looking for a problem, right? Like I don't care if my finance is faster. Do I really care that it's decentralized? Because I trust Citibank or I trust PayPal, so I don't really need.
They don't understand the core value proposition, right?
And also they don't necessarily even care about that, right? However, in gaming we think it's different because in gaming, which is a $138 billion industry last year. 2.5 billion gamers today. So they all play games. That's like more than half of the world's internet, online people. And yet, for all that money that was spent, they own nothing, right? So with blockchain, however, using the technology of blockchain, you could actually introduce true ownership in those games. And so we believe that actually when you introduce true ownership in games, you would be now in a position to sort of accrue value maybe. We think conversion rates will increase. We think adoption will increase because for gamers, just like in the real world, if I could own what I play rather than rent or lease, I'd much rather own it, especially if it's for the same amount of money. So we actually think that will be a big driver for blockchain adoption.
So am I stretching this a little bit with this concept? Are we taking this is a little far-fetched, so hear me out.
Sure.
Are we taking a Ready Player One like concept that I can use, and if I have my guy, I can go into any other game
Right.
and move into that world with
Yeah.
my skills and ability, and it'll compensate for that inside the new game. Is that what you're speaking about?
So
Are
that's
you-
one element of it, right? And I think that in the mid to long term, that's where we're hoping it'll go.
Right.
However, in the short term, no. In the short term, I think it's not likely to be in that area because in order to use that non-fungible token in the other game environment, the game developer has to adopt
build
it
it.
first.
They have to build it.
So the incentive has to be, why would I do so? Right? So if you have a very popular game that has millions of players, then yes, for the other game developer, there's an obvious reason to adopt it because I get utility and I may have millions of these players enter this game universe. Now our approach has been, because the blockchain gaming space is still relatively young, has been to try to find ways in which traditional gamers can go into this, and that's why we work with big license partners. So if you sort of look online, one of our more famous products, I suppose, in blockchain is our Formula One deal. So we have a deal with Formula One where we are the exclusive developer and producer of Formula One non-fungible tokens.
Wow.
Right? Our very first non-fungible token that was sold, the 111 car, was sold for over 415 ETH.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
When did this happen?
This happened in either April or May, so
Okay.
very recent, right?
Absolutely.
And subsequent cars were sold for like 90 ETH or 100 ETH or fairly high prices. And you might ask the question, why? Why would someone pay so much money for a virtual car whose full utility isn't yet established, right? But if you look at it a different way and you say, well, if the car, for instance, if you knew and trusted in blockchain, then you know that this is the very first Formula One car that's made on blockchain, and there can never be a number
That's
one.
it.
That's it.
That's it.
Right? It's validated right there.
Right.
So that has value in itself, right? So that's kind of one area why that's what's so powerful. And then the person who bought it can trade it with others, or he can just keep it like artwork, right?
Right.
Why is a Picasso worth tens of millions of dollars, right? What makes it valuable is an interesting question, but it is unique. The
Right.
key thing is that it is
does
unique.
have that quality.
And so by using famous brands like Formula One, or we recently announced a deal with MotoGP as well,
Okay.
for instance, and we also announced a deal with Bayern Munich, which is the sort of football club. We're basically going into the world of collectibles.
I was going to ask you, how are you identifying the match? There has to be a matchup,
Yes,
right? You
correct.
have to have that crypto enthusiast,
Yes.
right? And then you have to have that
So
licensed
this is
product.
the point. There's a crypto enthusiast, yes, but the crypto enthusiast, at the end of the day, we're talking about tens of millions of people.
Okay,
right?
true.
Right. The online world,
Right.
the collectible audience, is way bigger than that, right? And arguably, it might even be in the billions of users because everyone collects something somehow, right? On the extreme side, you've got people paying millions of dollars for baseball cards, right? Or even more extreme for artwork. But on a more, let's say, regular side, you have people collecting stamps, football cards, or soccer cards, depends where you're from, right? So you have all of these collectible elements already, and so we think that sort of attaching it from the collectible side is a much easier pull by working with brands that people already love.
Okay.
So Formula One, 1.4 billion viewers, right, that watch Formula One, over 500 million fans. What percentage of those guys could potentially become blockchain users because they want to have that special collectible, right? So that's kind of the goal here. That's why we're working with brands, and Formula One also is because it's a kind of sport that is generally attracting people who have. I hope that's not mine. Is attracted by sort of has money, right? So they understand stocks, they understand trading, they understand finance. So the leap to go from there into blockchain isn't that great, right? And plus the collectible aspect, so we think that's a good match, right?
Okay.
So we're looking for brands that attract that audience at start, as opposed to, let's say, cartoon brands, which are interesting, but if it's a lot of people who don't understand finance at all, then that's a harder audience because you have to first explain to them the possibilities.
Right.
But the vision on this, of course, is that in the future, you would have all these new digital assets in these games, and the whole world might possibly be very different because you have a completely new asset class that simply did not exist before.
Well, I have to tell you that, wow. I really don't even say, just quite frankly, wow, I understand. Again, I collect.
Right.
So, action figures, believe it or not. I'm that grown kid.
Sure.
And we had a conversation that they were chipping that, and I said, yeah, I would buy a collectible that
Sure.
was based on black. There's not even a question about it. So I find it interesting, and this is where an interesting part comes into this exchange. You mentioned the younger audience that may not understand.
Not yet. Not yet.
So I'm wondering, the adoption, what is the audience, what's that cross section of folks that were the college, that are now out of college, right? So the guys 5 to 6 years, they were into anime.
Right.
They were into Naruto.
Sure, yeah.
What's for those who don't know, the latest collaboration,
Right.
Naruto and Coach.
Right.
So when you think about that generation grew, and that's a mall mentality based, right? So they, step by step, they grew up together. How are you approaching that consumer? Because it seems like there's a gap between CryptoKitties and Formula One.
Well, so when someone plays a Formula One game, right, the idea is not that you make a sort of understanding of, oh, here's CryptoKitties and here's Formula One, let's connect them, unless you do a specific crossover.
Right.
Here in this case, it's just, I love Formula One.
I'm sorry, I just had the thought of the crossover of a CryptoKitty driving a Ferrari. I'm sorry, it just shot in my mind just now.
But in blockchain, that could be possible,
Absolutely.
Right? Because these are actual items and you own them. And the concept of the license is also different because if I buy that non-fungible token, I actually own it, which means I can do whatever I want with it, actually, right? There's nobody that's necessarily restricting me in terms of the use of it. It's like if I go and buy a toy, and I was going to use this toy at home or in at the beach or in the office, nobody can, it's mine, I can do whatever I want, right? And that's the aspect that wasn't possible before in gaming. So it's extremely fascinating because we think that you don't even need the crossover. It's just that when you love a brand like Formula One, there's a percentage there that really sort of understands that value, we think, and would actually be more than happy to basically go on to the blockchain. But they don't need to even know that it's blockchain. Like, we're expecting that people are going to just play games because they have fun, and then, oh, actually, it could have value. I could sell it. And the other thing, which I think makes this thing so powerful, is that until this technology came around, there was no way for a gamer to really have ownership in a game economy.
Right.
You know, people talk about tokens, people talk about maybe, or you could invest in the equity in the company, but I actually wouldn't really be a sort of an owner in the ecosystem. Like in the real world, I'm a participant in the economy because I trade items, I work with other people, I have ownership in assets of my particular world or my city that I live in. It's not like I'm buying shares in Singapore, right? I might own a house, right? That's my contribution and my involvement to that economy.
Okay.
And that's the thing that blockchain and non-fungible tokens could now provide, which means that as a gamer, I'm not just provided from a play to earn standpoint. I am sort of rewarded for investing in it because if it's popular or then the value might increase, and I myself would benefit from being a loyal long-term player. What we also think it'll do is it'll allow people who are not gamers to participate in a gaming environment because it can be passive, right? Like in the same way that investors are passive. Right? So today, I can't participate in a game unless I have the skills to do so, which we think is very limiting. Right? And it's worth pointing out that yes, there's 2.5 billion gamers out there, but there's 3 billion people that don't game. And now the paradigm about the gaming industry has been that when first it was console, right? Remember the hardcore gamers, right?
Yeah.
But it was still a small audience, and the business really grew when mobile came. But mobile's sort of innovation there was that it made accessible gaming to a large audience.
Exactly.
Right? But what happened was that all these new gamers came in, playing Candy Crush or whatever, and then they said, wait, hold on a second, I kind of like games. Maybe I can upgrade to something bigger. And that's actually why console games and the broader game industry is bigger than ever before.
Right.
Now, we think blockchain can do something similar, but in this case, in the aspect of value. So the other people who can't compete with skills, I mean, for those of you who have children, you can probably empathize with the fact that your children will probably kick your ass in every game that's out there.
Right.
Okay, so you can't really compete with them. So how do I, as someone maybe less skilled but still interested, participate in their world?
Right.
It's hard because skill-wise I can't compete. But maybe I could be an investor, or maybe I could be a donor, or maybe I could have a different kind of involvement in the same way that you do in the real world today, where I'm not playing all the sports. I go watch the basketball game maybe that my kids play. I buy the basketball, I pay for the lessons or something, or tickets, or I arrange something, but I'm not there playing with him, right? And in the gaming world, that's still like this because there's no system. And we think this will completely change the gaming industry. We think it will create whole new economies. And we think it will change engagement and participation broadly in the virtual world.
Oh, that's a great way to wrap that up. I can't even say. That was a full analysis of what you have going on. So in a year, what can we expect when I see you again in 1 year?
Right.
What can I expect to hear from you about the successes that you've achieved?
Well, okay, so there's a few things I do need to be mindful as a public company. We can't give forward-looking statements. Right? Yeah, so we do have to be sensitive. But I can maybe give you some insights where I think the industry, where I'm hoping the industry will go.
Well, I appreciate
and
that.
where we ourselves hope to play a meaningful part. First, I think next year, including ourselves, we will see the first release of high-quality sort of blockchain games.
Yes.
So one of the things that's happened in the past is you had blockchain games that were fun and interesting, but not yet of the quality, because they're mostly, if not all, developed by people who are blockchain aficionados, but actually have never made a game. Right?
Yep.
To make a good game takes time. Right? So we started working on it, and a few other guys started working on it, but it won't be finished this year. It'll be finished maybe later next year.
There's two deadlines?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like making a movie.
Yes.
But the quality of those games, we think, that'll come out will then bring the first millions of players onto a blockchain game who have nothing to do with blockchain.
Right.
Because they're just going to play the game because it's a great game or it's a great IP. Right? And to us, we think that's kind of an interesting new shift where people will start realizing, wait, hold on, that's a great user acquisition strategy, but also it's a great way to educate around sort of the value of non-fungible tokens and maybe blockchain in general as a technology. So we think those elements will begin next year.
Okay.
And you'll have the first millions of people join join blockchain because of games, right? Which wasn't the case before, right? And I think and then after that, I think you'll see a race begin, other companies that want to enter that space. So right now it's intellectual curiosity, a lot of people are looking at the space, but it's not yet sort of reached critical mass, right? We're far away from that, right? When people talk about popular dApps and games, they're talking about 3,000 active users.
Okay.
I mean, our average games that are not blockchain have like hundreds of thousands of active users, right? And our bigger games have millions, right? So it's not comparable yet, right? And when that happens, then I think there's going to be a big impact. And I think the world will become a very interesting place after that.
I'm really interested in the, I'm going to specifically call this the blockchain gaming world.
Right.
Where, and by the definition is, defined as developers independently working on a collaborative effort to create a virtual world that you can port those assets over to.
Correct. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
No more, no less.
Yes. And I think the value on this also is that because the items are those that you own, we think there'll be, in the future, maybe not next year, but very soon, a new paradigm. And the paradigm will be that content will become the platform. Because people will design and make games and products or applications based on what you own rather than where you go to. Right? If you think about how you're consuming content today, you're consuming it by going to Netflix or to the Apple Store or to Amazon Prime, for instance. Because what you own is irrelevant, right? Because the content is not owned by me. But if I own assets and items, imagine I knew that you owned a tennis racket, right? Then I would try to get you to go to my tennis court, right? And so in the gaming world, we see that the same thing. Imagine if games that were popular, like a Formula One game was sort of, let's call it mildly popular, and we had millions of customers that would own Formula One items. Even if our own game was mediocre in success, how many other game companies would choose to make a game that uses our Formula One non-fungible tokens? Because now they can.
Absolutely.
Right? So suddenly I now can erase those items in my own game. I can use Formula One cars, for instance, without having to go through the same sort of prospects. And the value of those items could increase potentially, or at least sustain in value. And there's value all around. So we think
making Ready Player One, huh?
That's precisely it.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Thank you.
That's spot on, dude. So as I leave with this enamored state, what advice can you give our audience? What advice personally and professionally, since you mentioned the personal kind of not business related advice, for those out there trying hard to want to get to a level that you've reached? I know that you had a more traditional background in the gaming, and now this new world, it's kind of one of those unique scenarios you're able to kind of jump over there and scale. But can you offer any advice to our viewers and just getting through the grind of finding their place in the world of blockchain? Because this is the future. You must find your place.
So I think the way I look at it is, finding your place is independent of blockchain. As in, blockchain might be the technology that will help you drive that purpose, but the most important thing, I think anyway, is that you have to find a purpose, and ideally a purpose that is greater than yours, like your own. Right? If you have something that's worth fighting for, that is so meaningful, then sleepless nights, working hard, sacrifices you make are nothing.
It's nothing.
And I think we've seen that, right, in the blockchain world. The ones who really believe in decentralization, or the ones who really believe in a new sort of decentralized world order because of all the injustices that they've seen in a centralized environment.
Absolutely.
And so they're driven by a purpose that is higher than personal gain. Right? And that's, if you haven't found that, then it's okay, you can keep looking for it, but look for that, because I think, we think anyway, that is what will give you more purpose and meaning in your life.
I can't say anything else to depart on those words. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Wow.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show. Guys,
Thank you.
Great words of wisdom here. I hope you take that to heart. Find a purpose greater than you.
Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the day.
Great. Thanks.